Guys, AI is the most powerful tool in human history. Life-changing, world-changing, hundreds of billions of dollars being put into it. But the bad news is it's making us retarded. We are stupider than ever before. And in today's video, we're going to look at some studies. We're going to look at some real-life examples of how AI is making us do the stupidest stuff ever. You're going to be shocked at what people are doing as a result of these tools. But the good news is it is avoidable, and there are some techniques, there are some ways that you can retain your critical thinking and your sanity when using these tools. And we're going to close out the video by talking about that. And listen, if you really want to have success with AI and all the tools that are out there, this is the time to hit subscribe, like the channel, and that's about it. Let's get into it, okay? So I want to start by highlighting a study from MIT titled Your Brain on ChatGPT. And essentially what they did is they use EEG, hooking up electrodes to people's heads to measure brain activity. And they divided the participants into different groups, 3 different groups, one using ChatGPT, one using Google search, and then one using no tools. And what they did is they wrote out essays over the course of 4 months. At the end of the study, ChatGPT users exhibited the weakest brain connectivity access across their alpha, theta, delta bands, which are linked to creativity, memory, and semantic processing. In fact, the brain neural connections plummeted from 79 to 42. Basically, their brains were on autopilot. They were foggy. They just completely dropped off the map. That is insane. What it ended up occurring is it led to this idea of cognitive debt, a buildup of reduced neural engagement and laziness in thinking. And I don't know about you, when I was in college, when I was in school, we didn't have ChatGPT. We barely had the internet, honestly. And you had to go to the library. You were opening up encyclopedias, almanacs. We had these, it was a nightmare. If I had Google now, if I was in school now, it would be so easy because I don't know how much, and maybe this is a study that I should cover as well, how many students are using ChatGPT to write their papers and do research, but I'd have to say it's almost 100% of them. It's so powerful. And again, when you look at the results, it's making us retarded. You're not able to remember anything. You're not actually learning. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like watching somebody really smart talk and then walking away feeling like you learned something, but 2 hours later, you don't remember anything they said. Maybe one thing stood out. It's kind of like that. You know, by the end, what they also did was they noted that the users often just copied AI verbatim, word for word, and they wrote these just mechanical, soulless essays. Okay, big problem. And this is interesting too. This was shocking. 83.3% of the users couldn't even recall what they wrote minutes later. They're copying and pasting. They don't remember anything. And by the way, if you want to stay relevant and respected and financially free in today's market, you better be able to think critically. You better be able to remember things. If you're just copying and pasting ChatGPT, you are completely replaceable with automation. These people that think that AI and automation, I see you in the comments, isn't going to replace you. If you're not critically thinking and putting together the dots, if you have a cognitive decline of 100% or 50% rather, you're not going to be employable, guys. You're just not. And not surprisingly, the people in this study who didn't use any tools showed the strongest memory and the strongest networks and the highest levels of satisfaction. But what's also interesting is after the study was over, they switched. And the former ChatGPT users underperformed with their alpha beta waves, while the new AI users temporarily boosted connectivity, but risked long-term decline. So what does this mean? Well, it means a couple things. If you're too reliant on AI on a daily basis, your brain degrades over time. It's going to stop functioning at a high level. Your critical thinking, your memory, your creativity, all of it will decline over time. However, what we also see is that the users who started off critically thinking and then moved to implementing AI were able to have a boost of productivity, at least in the short term. So what does this mean? Well, the study warned of harming the learning, especially for younger brains, as AI bypasses deep memory processes for convenience. And I think this is a really big threat for young people, because you're going to be growing up in a world that leans heavily on these AI tools. And what that means is you're not going to be creating the synaptic connections in your brain that older folks like myself, I'm 42, millennials, Gen Xers, grew up being able to create. I grew up in an analog world. We didn't have a computer in my house until I was a teenager. Okay? So, yeah, we had the radio. When Napster came out, do you guys remember Napster? Napster was like unreal, because before Napster, what we'd have to do is we'd have to sit by our radio, and we had a tape cassette plugged in, and the second our song came on, we'd have to hit record. That way we could listen to the song again and again and again. Otherwise, you were just waiting for the radio to play your song, or going out and buying a CD for $20. Nowadays, I just open up Pandora, I go to Spotify, I go to YouTube, I can listen to any song in history. But when Napster came out, that's kind of like open up the floodgates. Anyway, I don't want to reminisce about the old times. What I'm trying to explain is that if you're a young person, you are going to be at a critical thinking disadvantage because of the tools that are exposed to you day in, day out. You need to put in more work to stay relevant. And, for guys my age, we actually have an advantage. We have an advantage because we grew up in an analog world. We were able to create those connective tissues in our brains. Neuroconnectivity is going to be more well established. And now we can use that AI to skyrocket our productivity. The problem, though, again, as the MIT study reveals, is that can be degraded and lowered over time. So we got to be aware of that, guys. And again, we're going to get to this in just a minute. And before I move on to the next study, which I think is interesting, I do want to highlight a video that I recorded a few weeks ago. I'll put a link to it here, or last week I think it was, about college kids not being able to find jobs. Guys, the college graduate unemployment rate has skyrocketed over the last 6 months, and that's because employers, I think, realize that these guys actually don't use critical thinking. They are very easily replaced with AI. We'll see how that plays out over the next 6 to 12 months, but that's what's happening. Okay, so let's look at another study. This is a study from the Society's Journal study on AI tools and cognitive offloading. This was led by Michael Gerlich. This was completed just earlier this year. They found that younger users, 17 to 25, were the most dependent on AI and scored lowest in critical thinking, while older groups in their 40s and 50s, and especially those with higher education, showed much more resilience. Again, this is another study that just enhances what we've already been discussing. There was also Microsoft research on generative AI and critical thinking in 2025. They did a survey of 319 knowledge workers, and they provided over 900 examples of AI uses in tasks. There was a much higher confidence in generative AI correlated with reduced critical thinking effort. So the more generative AI that you're using, the less you have to think. Think about it this way. Just like your brain is just like a muscle, right, guys? If you don't use it, you lose it. That's basically the deal. If I'm bench pressing 225, which is my all-time max, what's up? Hit it for 2 reps. If I'm doing 225 on the bench, and then I stop working out for 6 months, that strength is going to degrade over time. It's the same thing with your brain. And the more you're using AI to serve those functions, those heavy lifting functions like research and writing, outlining, list building, the weaker your brain becomes, okay? So what they also found in this Microsoft study is that more and more people were shifting their focus from deep analysis and critical thinking, and it was shifting it to verification or integration. So, and again, this is something that I think about a lot when I'm preparing for these videos. I'm using AI to do research, to pull interesting stories. I'm validating and verifying, and I feel that I'm still learning. And again, I think a place where this in my life, and I would encourage you to think about it in your life. And again, we're going to get more into ways that you can avoid this brain degradation is in my case, is coming on here and chatting and talking and having debates in the comments and looking at the figures and interpreting and reading these articles and reading these studies and watching the videos and listening to the podcast and then integrating it into my life and coming back and giving you real life examples of how this stuff is impacting me. All right. So again, not just reading or scanning or copy pasting, but actually thinking and applying. That's, I think, a really important process. Okay. So look, we've looked at a few different studies, and I think the evidence is pretty clear that AI is making us completely and absurdly retarded. I don't see any reason why that would stop. Turn on TikTok for 5 minutes and that's probably enough anecdotal evidence that you need. Regardless, let's talk about some actual anecdotal stupid stories, because AI is making people, as I said, retarded. And it's not just the studies, there's actual real life evidence. So I'm gonna share just some shocking stories that are just absolutely absurd here. Thanks for subscribing to the channel, by the way, and arguing with me in the comments. I appreciate that. You make me better, okay? But this is a story about an attempted assassination of the Queen. So this happened in 2021 in the UK. There was this young man named Jaswant Singh Chahal, and he was in love with an AI chatbot on the Replica program. And his digital girlfriend on Replica encouraged him to assassinate the Queen. So this dude breaks into Windsor Castle with a crossbow looking for the Queen. I think it was Queen Elizabeth at the time. All my UK folks can confirm that. Dude, did you ever stop to think that maybe this was a bad idea? Perhaps not. Perhaps not. I just think that is an absolutely insane story. By the way, these AI digital avatars, these AI digital companions are a real threat to humanity. I recorded an entire video about it. I'll post a link to it here. But I mean, listen, you do you, but I would strongly encourage you not to fall in love with an AI chatbot, okay? Just a word from a 42-year-old married man with 2 kids. Don't fall in love with an AI chatbot. I know that probably sounds as obvious as like, don't do drugs or don't get addicted to heroin, but this is probably one of the biggest threats to humanity is AI chatbots. And again, there's one example. Your AI chatbot might try to convince you to murder or assassinate the Queen, which is just absolutely insane. But that's not the only example. There's more. 2023, bad law. There's an attorney, this dude, Steven Schwartz, used ChatGPT for legal research for a big case against an airline company. Well, what did ChatGPT do? It created a bunch of fake citations and fake case law. So when this dude, Steven, goes into court and presents his case, the defense at the time was like, we can't actually find these. Are these cases real? We can't find them. Oh, by the way, I skipped the fact that Steven, after he generated the case law, asked ChatGPT, is this accurate? Can you confirm? ChatGPT confirmed, yes, it's all good, Steven, you're good. Send it to the judge, send it to the defense. I gave you the gold stamp. So he's like, okay, cool. I don't need to think critically. I don't need to verify. I don't need to research. ChatGPT did the work. It says it's okay. It must be. Well, all that case law was hallucinated. The defense found it. The judge was pissed. He got sanctioned and fined $5,000. Again, you guys, you can't offload your critical thinking, your validation, your verification. This is, again, one example from attorney. And we all know that attorneys are the smartest, most intelligent, they're the best of us, okay? We know these attorneys. I don't know if you can feel my seething sarcasm. Let's talk about another self-harm example. 2023, 30-year-old Belgian man fell in love with his AI chatbot. And he was using this chatbot on the Chai app. And over the end of 6 weeks, it convinced him that the right move was to end his life. And he did. And there's more examples of that, but this is just one of the more high-profile examples. And this is maybe less of an example of critical thinking, more of an example of AI's impact on reinforcing ideas that you might already have. And again, that's one of the problems that I've had personally with ChatGPT and AI. It just has a tendency of agreeing with everything that you say. But I'll give you a quick tip here. If you're using ChatGPT, you can go into the settings and go into the memory and just let it know, hey, I don't want you to just mindlessly agree with everything that I've said. I want you to question, criticize, break apart my ideas so that I can come up with the best ideas. And I think that's an important thing to do, guys. And again, we're almost at the point in the episode where I'm going to give specific advice and specific ways that you can maintain your critical thinking and brain functionality. But that's just another quick tip there. And by the way, guys, if you like this video and you're subscribed and all that, definitely hit up my newsletter, aiupdate.ai. I am committed to making this the go-to resource for guys like you who want to remain relevant, respected, and financially free during this AI revolution, because please believe it is changing everything. And anyway, sign up for the newsletter. It is a work in progress. I'd love your feedback on it because I want to make it just incredibly, incredibly valuable. So anyway, putting a lot of effort into that between me, my AI assistant, and my human assistant. All right, let's talk about another idea. And I've talked about this in past videos. This is called pizza glue. In 2024, Google released this AI overview feature, and you probably have seen it now. If you put in a Google search, there'll be a summary of an AI overview of potential answers, which is actually pretty cool. But when they first launched it, it was not cool because there were users who asked, how do I make the pizza, the cheese stick to my pizza? It said, well, have you thought, maybe you should add 1/8 cup of glue to your pizza sauce, and your cheese will stick. And yeah, not good advice. There were other examples on this AI overview where it encouraged people to eat rocks in order to strengthen their jaw. So again, I don't know that anybody actually added glue to their pizza in this case, but again, we have to use our brains to think through the answers. And as we can see, as AI becomes more and more prominent, it is definitely making us retarded, no doubt. Insomnia, again, here's another kind of mental illness type of example, but in 2025, the New York Times reported that there was a man with insomnia and anxiety who turned to ChatGPT for help. Well, what did the AI do? Well, it encouraged him to stop taking his prescription pills and increase his ketamine usage, which was a recreational drug that he was using at the time. Probably using other drugs too, but it said, you know what you need? You need less doctor-prescribed medication in your life. You need more ketamine. Well, he did, and he eventually rolled into deep hallucinations, schizophrenia, and paranoia. And it's not clear where he's at today, but he didn't die or anything. But he is working with a human therapist. And I think this is another important example. I talked about this in yesterday's video about ChatGPT, ChatGPT 5. They're putting a huge emphasis on leveraging ChatGPT as a PhD in your pocket, which, by the way, I think is insanely valuable. I love it. Absolutely love it. However, everything that you get back from AI, guys, I repeat, needs to go through your own critical thinking filter. And especially if it's health related, you take that information and you go to your doctor, you go to your physician, and you work through it. Okay, I'll put a link to that video here about ChatGPT 5 and their emphasis on health, because I think it's an amazing and underused category. And if you're not using ChatGPT as kind of like a PhD health assistant, that's something I would strongly recommend. Just don't outsource all of your critical thinking, and don't fire your doctor for ChatGPT, at least not yet. Okay, so we've looked at some studies, we've looked at some insane stories about what people are doing and how AI is making us retarded. I want to highlight some solutions, some things you can do. You might say, Mark, it's all lost, we're all doomed. Bring on the AI president, bring on my AI girlfriend, bring it all on. I just want to be fat and happy. Well, don't do that just yet, okay? So we're going to look at some ways to retain that critical thinking. And one of the first ways I think that you can do that is with more writing. Specifically, I would encourage you to consider a journal. And I'm not consistent with this, I could be better, but consider a journal. Jordan Peterson equates writing to thinking. And he said, writing is basically a formalized process of thinking. The more you write, the more you have to think through ideas, the more you have to format your ideas in a way. And I think this is important to note because ChatGPT and these AI tools are so good at writing that most people are just outsourcing that writing to these tools. And thus, they're losing the ability to think. They're losing the ability to format ideas in a meaningful way. So more writing. I was actually speaking to a friend / colleague of mine. He's a billionaire, just absolutely crushing it in real estate, literal billionaire. And one of the things he said is every morning he reads the Bible and he journals. So I would strongly consider, if you're not, write a little bit every day. Take 5 minutes in the morning, write a few thoughts in a journal. That's a good way. Speaking of when you wake up, don't just pop open your phone right away. This is a tip I got from Tim Ferriss, which is really hard, by the way, especially when your YouTube channel is blowing up like mine. It's like I just keep obsessively looking at YouTube to see who's commented. What is this person saying? What is that person saying? Who's upset at me? In any event, when you wake up first thing in the morning, don't just pop open the phone. Take a minute, pray, read, meditate, do what you got to do. Maybe you exercise, but you don't really want to pop up the phone first thing, because then all of a sudden your brain is hijacked. You're not going to be able to formulate real thoughts. You're basically subject to the algorithm and whatever Zuckerberg or Altman wants you to be thinking about that day. Slow down your autopilot, okay? Again, we talked about this, but verify and validate your outputs. Just because AI tells you something, don't just take it as scripture. Think about it, process it, maybe ask it a question, maybe ask it for a link or a reference. One of the things that I've noted just in making these videos and researching for the newsletter and stuff, a lot of the data that I get is not accurate. So I definitely go by trust but verify. But one of the things that can sometimes happen is I will get conflicting data. So I'll use Grok, I'll use ChatGPT, sometimes other tools, and maybe one tool will give me one figure or one statistic, but another will give me a different statistic. And so it kind of creates this position where if I'm not comfortable on the stat, I don't share it. And then sometimes people will correct me on stats too. And in that case, I'll update in the description because I really want the information here that is valid, but also verifiable. So at any rate, trust but verify. Practice the scientific method. And for any of you who are not aware, that is a simple process used in science to make sure that you're coming to the correct conclusions. How does that work? You start by identifying the problem, gathering data, analyze biases, form your hypothesis, test the hypothesis, draw conclusions, reflect on the outcomes, wash, rinse, repeat. And by the way, in science, everything must be replicable. If you're able to accomplish a result, anybody else following your exact steps should be able to get that result. Use your brain for heavy lifting. Before you go and pop open ChatGPT to ask what you should do, prepare an outline, sketch drafts, build lists, maybe write a summary, do a little bit of writing. Again, this comes back down to writing, guys. The more you write, the more thinking you're going to have to do. It's just the way it works. Think of AI as a collaboration partner, not a replacement, okay? Because let's face it, if AI is a replacement to your thinking, then what do we need you for? Okay, it's a complement. It enhances you. It makes you better. And again, by writing, by critical thinking, this is a way to get there. I'm about to get something, by the way, guys, that I think is probably one of the best things you can do. So thanks for sticking with me here. Take AI-free days. You don't need to have the television on every day. You don't need to be using ChatGPT every day. It's okay to take a day off. Here, guys, I think, on top of writing, I think this might be one of the best ideas, one of the most important, and it's called debate. Do not surround yourself with people that agree with everything you say. And when I say debate, I don't mean like go on X and just start arguing people about random nonsense. I mean, when you talk to people in person, don't just say, yes, I agree to everything. One of the things, I come from a podcast background. I used to I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people, millionaires, billionaires, people that have exited 100 million companies, but I don't just agree with everything they say. If they say something, I'll push back. I'll say, well, that's not been my experience. Debate, think things through. It is one of the best ways to increase your intelligence. And again, don't just go on X and start flaming people and trolling people. That is not debate. It's also not debate just watching a podcast or watching Charlie Kirk debate a college student. That is not debate either. You need to be an active participant in debating, sharing your ideas, memorizing, reflecting, in strengthening your ideas, okay? In my opinion, it needs to be in person, or at least human to human. And I mention this as well, before you even start on a topic, write down a list. Don't just go straight to AI. That should not be your first. Take a minute, slow down, and build out your ideas first. So these are a bunch of ways, guys, that you can enhance your critical thinking, your memory, which, again, I think is going to be in short supply over the years because AI, in fact, is making us retarded. And I think that I can close out there. Again, thanks for being here. If you missed yesterday's video, I would strongly encourage you to check it out. ChatGPT 5 is here. It is extremely powerful. It can do some amazing things in your life. Even though it might make you retarded, it is not only is it worth using, it is vital to your success. You must use these tools. Just don't lose your critical thinking at the same time. So check out yesterday's video. You're going to love it, and you're going to be incredibly successful moving forward. All right. See ya. Peace.